Hey guys, it's John with CheatSheetPros.com. It is January 30th, 2021, and I'm going to recap the NBA betting tab yesterday because we have a lot of people that are using our NBA cheat sheets for the sports betting, and since we have a lot of newer members in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I'm going to recap the games from yesterday and kind of show you some things to look at. I've been dealing with the sheet for a long time, so I kind of know which teams are good, which teams are bad, so I want to help others out and kind of show you what I'm looking at. So here we click the home team, and this will change the game. So I'm going to start at the bottom, work my way up. So this is Utah. This was probably the best play recommended by our sheet last night. So these are the first things you want to look at is right over here. So you can see that we had 122 to 100. So we had Utah winning by 22 points. So that can be a little extreme, so you want to check the injuries. So there were no big injuries. Everybody was playing. So the spread over here is -4. We have them winning by 22. That would make that the best play on the board. Now you can see over here, they won 120 to 101. So they won by 19. So that was pretty accurate. It's not always that accurate, but every now and then, you run into something solid, you got to roll with it. So that's one team that we do like. Now, if you're looking at a total, I would glance at this and say, okay, we're at 219, 222. Vegas has this at 222, pass. If you are going to look into a total and you definitely want to play this game, a couple other points that I would make is the against the spread record over here. So you can see both of these teams are heavy unders. 61.1% for both teams are hitting the under. So they're a combined, 14 and 22 for the over. So 22 and 14 for the under. And then come down here and look at this pace possessions per game in the bottom right. And you can see 27th and 28th on the year. And over the last 3 games, 25th and 26th. So basically slow all year, and they're still playing slow. The other thing I check over here is the last 3 games, and I'm looking for red or green. So red basically means they're inefficient, they're not taking as many shots, their shot percentages are down. Green is good. That means they're one of the top teams. Last 3 games, they're hot, they're doing really well. So here you can see Utah's got a lot of green over here. If you want a further breakdown, you can watch the tutorial video. The links are up here on this side. And then you can see Dallas, they've got a little bit of red. So you could bet either way here. I would probably lean over just based on that information. And this calculation testing, I know I tell people don't worry about it. It's some numbers I'm running in the background. I keep them visible just so I can access them and go back and check everything out. But these 3 numbers here in the middle, let me make sure you can see that on your screen. Okay. These 3, so you can see these are just different scenario outcomes. And then this is kind of an average of the outcomes. So I just glance across these 3 and see if there is a huge disparity in the highest and lowest number, because that's going to change the range of outcomes. So here you can see we had 215 to 228, and with the spread at 222, Vegas nailed it perfectly. They put it right in the middle of our range of outcomes. So if it's, you could pretty much say it's a 50-50, I would stay away from it. Now it ended at 221, so it fell right in the middle of this outcome. So again, play Utah. I would pass the total there. That's how I would have played it yesterday. Okay, so let's look at another game. I'm going to go through this semi-quick. So if I skip something, feel free to message me, ask a question. I'm always around. So Denver, San Antonio. This is one game here we're going to take a look at. So we had Denver -3, and I believe San Antonio, they won by 10. So this is a game that we missed. But I would look at this and say, okay, the Vegas spread is Denver -4. We have Denver -3. So people would say, okay, well, I'm going to bet San Antonio +4. Well, it's a 1-point difference. Now, yes, San Antonio did win by 10 points, but that's so close, I don't feel comfortable with that play. So if it was me personally, I would say, okay, I'm going to fade this game. There's nothing that jumps out at me to give us an edge. It's a 50-50 game, and San Antonio ended up winning. So if you took it down to the exact point and said, okay, this says San Antonio should get +3, but I'm getting +4. I'm going to bet it. Yes, you would have won, but that's not always the best way to go. But whatever works for you is fine. As far as the total, we had somewhere between 220, 226. Vegas opened it at 224. It dropped to 222. We got it slightly over. Again, that's too close for me. That's not a game that I'm going to bet. It ended up going, what was it? 228. So 228, it went over. So we were pretty close. We had it at 226 here. It ended at 228. Our range of outcomes was around 221 to 227, so it hit on the higher end. So if you're just glancing at this, I would say, okay, 222, where does it fall in this range of outcomes? If we're here, it's going to fall, if we're looking at, let's just say this is a graph, it's going to fall about here. So I'd say, that's 60 to 70% of the range of outcomes is going to be towards an overplay here, but there is still a 20-30% chance it goes under. So it's one to be careful on, but something to look at. Also, we're going to check the pace of the game again, and you can see both of these, they're 11 to 18 season and last three. So the pace I'm not worried about. They're going to stay in that range. Both teams are about the same, so one's not going to pull the other one up or pull the other one down. Both teams have some green in here. There's no red on one side, green on the other, so nothing significant. And as far as the efficiency, 220, 216, an average of about 218. So you could look at this and say, okay, they're going to play to 2.18, and we have our pace about 102.4, so it's going to put us about this 226 number, which it ended at 228. So that was fairly close. So the biggest thing that I want to stress if you're sports betting is look at the disparities. So the possessions, you want to make sure there's not two huge possessions. We'll see a game here in a minute and take a look at it. And then also the efficiencies. You want to make sure that these are fairly close. The wider they are, the bigger the gaps, the wider the range of outcomes. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next game. So here we got Minnesota, Philadelphia. Minnesota's tough. You look at the sheet here and you say, okay, Minnesota's 2, but they're favored 7. Maybe I'm going to bet Minnesota. Now, it's hard to put common sense into the sheet. Now, if you look at the sheet and you just play off that and you don't understand basketball, that's perfectly fine. This play would have been a loss. Let me double check it. Yeah, so Philadelphia rolled them. However, I'm looking at this and I see Philadelphia is 13-6 facing Minnesota, who's been terrible at 4-13. I just don't feel confident about Minnesota. Minnesota, you can check right here. They're 7-10 against the spread. They're covering 41.2% of the time. I don't feel comfortable in playing Minnesota, especially against the Philadelphia team that is really good. Now, one thing with Philadelphia you'll notice is they're really good at home. They got a 10-1 record, but they're 3-5 on the road. So they are on the road. So if you did bet Minnesota, I could see that. But again, Minnesota is not a team I feel comfortable backing. So this is one I just kind of glance at it and I say, okay, I did a 3-team parlay yesterday. I put Minnesota -7 in, or not Minnesota, Philadelphia -7 in there. But it's just because I figured they were going to roll them. But nothing in the sheet kind of pointed to that. So that's something to keep an eye on. Now, let's look at the pace real quick. So this game went under. So Vegas opened it at 225 and went down to 224, and we've got it at 226, possibly 230 in our range, 222 to about 231. So we had it kind of leaning over, but again, you got to be careful because Minnesota does not score that many points. So this is one that I would probably stay away from the total. And if you want to just look at it quick, look here, 226, 224, it's too close. I'm going to stay away. Let's go ahead and move on. So let's buzz up here. I'm going to try to get through all these games from yesterday. So Brooklyn, OKC. Brooklyn and the Lakers are two teams that it's really hard to look at the sheet just because of, one, Brooklyn has so many different players that came in. So now they've got 3 studs and they've been getting rolled and putting up a ton of points. So Brooklyn is almost an overbet automatically whenever they play. Yes, you're going to miss some, but the shots are there. The ones they do miss, they're just missing a lot of those shots. So the one thing to notice on Brooklyn, they're 14-6 for the over. So over 70% of the time, their games are going over. They don't play any defense. Their totals are always going to be between 230 and 235, and I'm assuming it's going to be that way for the rest of the season. So on this game, I'm going to look at it and say, okay, Brooklyn, we have favored by 7. The spread's 7. I'm probably going to stay away from that. Now, people might lean OKC just because of how bad Brooklyn's been playing, but I'm more interested in the total here. So with 70% of the games going over, We've already got it at 226. Here we have it at 227, and we have a range of outcomes from 223 to about 230. So this opened up and it's at 230. So if you're looking at the range of outcomes, this might lean you down to the under. But with 70% of the games going over, maybe this is a game you want to look into a little further. So you come down here at the possessions, and you can see, so Brooklyn is 4th fastest on the year. They're 9th over the last 3 games. And then we have OKC that's kind of middle of the road. So I expect Brooklyn to move the pace up in this game because they're the favored team. So if, let's say you flip it, it's a team like Utah that's favored and they play slow, they're going to bring it down because more than likely they're going to have the lead, they're going to slow the play, and they're not going to let the other team run all over them. Brooklyn's the opposite. They're going to play fast, they're going to score a lot of points, and the other team's just got to try to keep up, and they're going to have a ton of shot attempts. So when we're looking at the efficiencies, so we have this. What's good about this is, look, they're the same number all the way across the board, 2.18, 2.18, 2.18. So we know this game is going to play roughly about 2.18, give or take a couple points here and there, but that's pretty accurate. If you get one that's 2.05 and one that's 2.25, that's a huge variance. You want to be careful with those, and you want to understand game theory and how that game is going to play out. But sitting at 2.18 across the board, we can pretty much guess that this game is going to play about 2.18. So that means 218 points per 100 possessions. So then you want to figure out how many possessions are going to be in this game. So you can see our roto pace here has it about 104. Pretty much across the board for these is about 104, could get up to 105. But one thing that I notice here is the home and road, they're 105.5, 107.1, and then OKC at home's at 105. So I'm going to guess this is probably going to tick up a notch. So you got 105 here for the home team, 105.5 for the road team. And so if you just do some basic math, I have a calculator here outside the window. Let me pull it up real quick. And then say we give them 105.5 possessions times that 2.18. That's going to put us at 230 points. So if you're looking at that and you dig into the numbers a little further, you say, okay, it's going to put us at 230. The spread's at 230. And then you can kind of make your pick from there. For me, Brooklyn's almost an auto play on the over most of the time. They end up scoring, what was that? Oh, here it is. 272 points, a whole bunch. So it went over. But that's one thing you want to glance here, see if we're close, and then to investigate it further, look at the pace, look at the offensive efficiencies, look over here, see if there's any heavy red or green on each side to see if a team's doing good or bad, and then make a play from there. Also, you can check the teams against the spread numbers here. So the sheets here, it'll give you good plays, but some of them, when they're close, you got to investigate it a little bit more. That's the main point I'm trying to make. So here, the first thing that jumps out at me, this line moved 10 points yesterday. So when Kawhi and Paul George they didn't think they were going to play. They were plus 3.5. Once they were rolled in, it quickly moved over to minus 6.5. So this is obviously probably going to be a play on the Clippers. If you come down here, you say, okay, we have Clippers -1. However, common sense is going to tell you some of these numbers are skewed because Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have been out for, I think it was COVID-19 contact tracing. They had to quarantine for X amount of days, whatever it was. So then you take this and you just throw it out the window. If you really want to know what it is, you can go look at the on-off numbers or look at the Clippers season totals and throw out the last 3. That's a lot of work. You don't have to do that, but that's just one thing to keep in mind with the sheet. You can see over here it's going to sit about 2.15. Again, I take this with a grain of salt because we have 2 stud players that are in that have not been in the last couple of games, and they end up winning 116-90. So again, if there's significant players in or out, either in recent games or the current game, be careful with the stats. I used to have a on-off section where you could type in the players' names and it would tell you the differences. I'm going to bring that back. I just haven't had time to get to it yet, so bear with me. It is coming. So Cleveland, New York, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this game. Open pick went -2. We had it as a tight game, and I think the Knicks end up blowing this one out. Yeah, 102-81. The main thing I wanted to point out here was you could glance at this and say, okay, we have Cleveland -3. They're getting +2. either way, it's a close game. A point to 3 points on either side, one winning. You're crossing over 0. We have it as a tight game, so it's probably a fade for me, especially when these teams are, pretty much about 50-50 on the spread. The one thing I want to point out is the total. So we just had this game a few days ago. I think it was about a week ago, and I was like, bet the under, bet the under, bet the under, bet the under. And the reason is just the pace and the efficiencies, and they ended up scoring like 185 points. So when this game came up, I knew they had just played. I knew they scored about 185. So for me, it was an under. Now you can see it opened at 206. It moved up to 209, and 91% of the bets on the over. That's fine. I can get behind that if you want to bet an overplay. I could see it. It's in the range of outcomes. But what you notice here, this range of outcomes, 203 to 224, that's huge. I mean, that is a wide range of outcomes with a lot of them going towards the over. Now, because of that, I completely understand why Vegas, everybody bet the over and 91% of the wagers were on the over. Well, our range of outcomes was projecting that to go over too. However, look at these two teams against the spread for the under. So they are going under 55.6 and 68.4% of the time. And then you have the Knicks here, who they play at the slowest pace in the NBA. They're 30th on the season and 30th over the last 3 games. So they are slow. They're going to slow the game down. And they just played and had 185 points. So knowing that, for me, I look at this and say, okay, we're at 210. We have a wide range of outcomes. So I know there's a lot of disparity. 210, the spread's 209. That's too close. But using a little common sense and seeing the against the spread numbers here, knowing they just played, put together 185 points. And then down here, our roto projected pace of 96.7, that is low. So league average is about 103 to 104, just kind of depending. It moves up and down a little bit each day. And then over here, this is the wide range of numbers I was talking about. So you can see the low number is 2.11, the high number is 2.21. So this is going to change drastically. So if you just take an average of those, you're going to get about 2.16. And then 2.16 for 100 possessions would be 216 points, putting this game over. However, we've got it down to 96.7, which is bringing it down a lot closer to that 209 number. Now it ended up at 102 to 81. So again, they just played. They had like 185, 186 points. They ended with 182. So just keep in mind that even though we project this at 96, with them playing this slow, if the Knicks get the lead, they're going to pull this thing down to a crawl. And then also look at all of the red. Whenever you see red, I just say red transitions to more unders and green transitions to more overs. So you can see the Knicks, I mean, they're 28th in three-point attempts. They're 28th in field goal percentage. Kind of the same over here on the other side. So neither team's shooting really well right now. So for me, that was an obvious under, but looking at the sheet, you might not have seen that. So I'm trying to get you guys to understand my mindset, kind of what I'm looking at, what I'm thinking. So over here with Milwaukee, Milwaukee's another team. They're almost an auto over bet. If you're looking at this, let's see what it looks like. So we got 230.5. We had it at 231. And we had a range of outcomes. It was fairly tight, 228 to 236.6, or let's just say 237. So we had it going over probably 80% of the time. So you come down here, you're going to check the possessions. You can see, okay, so Milwaukee played really fast. They've slid down to 18th. And then we have the Pelicans who played really slow, and now they're playing really fast. So we have a really fast team over the last 3 games and a mid-range team. So this is probably going to be a pace-up game, but safely we could say it's about 103.6 possessions. And then over here, if you check the efficiencies, I like this. It's 2.22, 2.23, 2.22. So it's going to play about 2.22, so that's pretty safe. So if you do some basic math and say, okay, the efficiency is going to be here, I'll show you this, 2.22. And then we got 103.6. We're just going to say 104 possessions. That's going to put us about 230 total points. And so that is a floor for us. So we know it's going to be about this many possessions. So this is pretty safe. It's slightly less than league average, so I feel confident in that. And then with these three numbers being pretty close to the same, I know it's going to play about 2.22. That puts it at 230. So for me, a floor is 230. And for some reason, Milwaukee games go over, it feels like all the time. Now you can see here, they're only 9-8 for the over, but I feel like every game that's heavy bet on the over, or that I see in a lot of the consensus picks, the thing goes over. So they end up putting up 257 over here last night. So they end up covering it. As far as the side, you look at this, you say, okay, we have Milwaukee favored by 8, spread 7. That's close enough, stay away. Final on this, Pelicans actually pulled out the win, and they end up winning by 5. So the total's the big one there that I wanted to show. And 3 more games. Let's see if we can knock these out real quick. Toronto, Sacramento. Toronto's had a lot of injuries up and down, so you got to be careful with their numbers. So you look here, we have Sacramento -3, but they're getting 5.5. So that's a disparity. You're crossing 0. So it could be a wide range of outcomes, but we have Sacramento favored by 3 in this game, and they're plus 5.5. So go out, grab the 5.5 points, or if you don't want to risk as much money, sprinkle a little bit, throw a unit or two on the Sacramento money line, and you can see the final over here. They end up, it was a tight game like we projected, 126-124. Sacramento won the game by 2. We had them winning by 3. So that was a good pick. On the total, we have 218, and the spread was 228, and this thing cruised over. So we missed the total, and so I would look at this and say, okay, I go back every morning and I take a look and I say, okay, we missed the total. Why did we miss the total? We had this around 218 points, and we had a range of 216 to 223. All of those are under. Well, Vegas agreed with us. They opened it up at 229, and everybody bet it down to 228, and there was 58% of the tickets on the under. So they agreed. The numbers and the stats pointed to the under. However, you look over here, Sacramento, they're hitting the over 65% of the time. So let's look into it a little further and kind of see what happened, or if we could project this in the future or change anything. So we go down here to possessions, and we see, fast team, middle of the road, and then we're going to project this about 103.4. And then our efficiency numbers are pretty consistent, 2.11, 2.12, 2.13. So we know it's going to play about 2.12. And then our roto pace is going to be about 103.4. The one thing you always want to check when I miss one, and when we do miss one, I see this right here, and this is an excellent example. So your home road splits here. So you can see at home, Sacramento plays at a 102.5, but on the road, they're playing at almost a 107, 106.9. We're going to round up, say 107. And then Toronto at home and away, they're pretty close. They're only about a possession off. So if you look at these two, and you can see I highlight them green, this game could get up there at a 107. And so if you factor in the home road splits for these teams, this little number down here, it says the full pace with home road splits, it's going to bump this up to about 104.2. So number-wise, let's just see what this looks. So 104.2 times, what did we say, 2.12 efficiency. So it's going to put us about 220, 221 points, which is going to be an under. This is one that we just clearly missed, but I want to show you how to look at it a little further. So look at the home road splits, make sure there's not a significant change. And then over here, there's a lot of green. So this means teams are making shots, they're taking shots. So we missed this one, but it was a good one to play. Let me see here. 2 more games. I'm going to hurry up and try to get through these. So Indy, Charlotte, what happened in this game? So Charlotte surprisingly won this game. And let's see what we have here. So we had Indy by 7. They're only laying 3.5. This is one I would play Indy here. They did not win. Charlotte ended up winning this game. I didn't check to see if there was any injuries or anything. There's no significant red or green on either side. As far as the total, we've got it playing about 2.18 at 100 possessions. So that's roughly about 218 points. 218, 220 if you're multiplying the average of these by this roto pace over here. And so spread of 221.5, we got it at 220. Pace down game, check under. So these last two, we've got them playing at the 14th and 22nd pace. You could lean under here. What was the final? 213. So yeah, it went under, but I mean, it's close enough. It's not something that I'm going to play. let's go ahead and take a look at the last game. So Washington, Atlanta. Washington's always tricky because of the studs that are in, out, rest, load management. The first thing I noticed right off the bat here is there's a lot of red on both sides, so that worries me if you're going to possibly play an over. That means a lot of teams are inefficient. They're not taking as many shots, or they're not making as many shots. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to check pace. So we've got bottom third and top third. So average it out. It could be somewhere around the middle. Vegas opened this at 232. It's at 234.5. 88% of the money on the over. So 234.5 is a pretty big spread. I want to check their against the spread totals. So you can see here Atlanta goes under 72.2% of the time. So that worries me with that many people betting the over, but they're an under team and they're playing a little bit slower. Now, most people, they look at the season pace here. You can see ninth and second fastest, like, hey, this is an easy over bet. But if you look at the last three and factor it in, they were playing at the second fastest. Now they're down to ninth, so they're slowing a tad bit. And then you can see they were ninth fastest, and now they're down to 20th. So both teams are slowing down a little bit. So that's going to put our projected pace about 104.7, which is above league average, but it's not out of hand. On a high case scenario, we have about 105 if you factor in the home road splits. And then over here, we have a wide range. So this game could play at 2.15 to 2.2. So that's going to change it quite a bit. And that's why you can see this 220 to 235. Well, the spread, 234.5 is our highest possible outcome. So this is an underplay. And with all the red, that points to an under. They're hitting the under 72.2% of the time. Both teams are slowing down a little bit, and we have it at 222. And even our range of outcomes, the highest possible outcome is what the spread's at. I mean, this is an obvious under. And so you come over here, and it ended at 226. We had it at 222. It went under. On the side, you'd look at this, say we have Atlanta -9. They're laying 3.5. Lay the 3.5, bet Atlanta, and they won by 6. So Vegas had them by 3.5. We had them by 9. We split it. They won by 6. So anyways, I'm going to try to do this as much as possible. I just wanted to show you guys the advantages of using the NBA bet tab for your sports bets, what to look at. A couple of tips. Lakers, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee are three teams that are different. So whenever you're looking at a Laker game, the models statistically favor the offense. However, if you're playing the Lakers, I have found it flips and it goes the other way and it favors the Lakers defense and keeping the points down. And then Brooklyn, those games are always going over. I don't think the sheet's ever going to catch up or have that accurately. So until they make a change on defense, Brooklyn's almost an over auto player, mix it into a parlay. But if you guys have any questions, let me know. I hope this helps, and we'll talk to you soon, and good luck.